This is going to be a more serious philosophy video than a lot of the other ones that I've made previously. Not saying that other philosophy videos of me talking about life, death, morality, and shit isn't serious, but this is something that you're probably going to be able to relate to in like a genuine experiential level versus something that's just like speculative about the afterlife or like society in general. We're going to be talking about how you can deal with the death of a loved one or just the experience of watching other people around you that you know die. And how fucking shit it is. Now, in your own life, you're going to experience people dying at a very different rate, right? Some people that watch me have both of their parents dead, and they're only 15, right, or 20 years old, and they don't have much family left, right? Then there's other people that don't really experience the first death in their family till they're 30 years old, right? I'm very fortunate that the first really close person in my life to die is at the age of 23, right? The age I am now. My grandfather just passed. And before you type rip in the comments, you don't need to do that. While I do appreciate it, right? I'm more so using this as a segue to talk about something serious. And I would have loved if my grandfather could have watched this video, but for obvious reasons, that's not going to happen. I feel like it's not generally universal, but more general that the first experience you have with somebody dying in your life is when you're like very young and a distant family member dies. Now, for some people, it might be their parent, right? And for those people, I'm truly sorry that you had to experience that. But for a lot of people, it's usually like somebody that's like a distant uncle or aunt, right? A great aunt or a grandparent that you weren't really close with dying. And it's a very weird experience in that moment, right? And I think as you age and the more close somebody is to you and the older you are as people die, the different feelings and emotions you have while you experience it, right? I can remember being 6 years old and being at my great aunt's funeral and not really caring, as fucked as it is to say. I barely knew her. I remember meeting her on multiple occasions, but not only did I not really perceive death in the light that I do now, just because your brain and your consciousness is less developed, but also because when you're that young and you don't really have an attachment to anybody, your whole life is revolved around you, right? You believe that everybody experiences life in the same way that you do. And, you know, watching people get really sad was a weird feeling at that age because I didn't get it. I remember messing around at the dinner, like the wake after, and getting yelled at and being like, what did I do? Like, I didn't understand, I guess, the gravity of the situation that was at hand, you know? And as you get older and you see your grandparents pass, you know, or your parents pass, or a cousin or a family member or a friend, it's a way different experience to go through. The first thing I want to say is, when I heard about my grandfather passing, I knew it was coming, right? This wasn't one of those situations where somebody just randomly dies and you hear about it. And I think that's just like a huge shock. This is one of those, you know, you start mourning before they're even gone. They're on hospice type of situations. I actually had a conversation with my grandfather 4 days before he died, where he told me he was going on hospice. And, you know, now it's been about 3 weeks, a month since he's passed. And it's still upsetting to think about, but I'm truly grateful that I was able to talk to him about it. And I'm going to get really in depth on, like, I guess the psychology of talking to somebody that knows they're going to die. But just to, you know, briefly start it out, having a conversation with my grandfather, right? Somebody that I'm 25% related to and, you know, is a reason that I exist. And also the main father figure in my life was truly shocking, right? If you remember, I did a hot tub stream with my friend, who's also a Twitch streamer, Koshard, and I left, like, you know, for 20 minutes in the middle of it, and a lot of people thought I was, like, mad or something. No, I literally left to go talk to my dying grandfather because it was, like, the only opportunity that I had. And I remember picking up the phone and talking to somebody that knows they're going to die is weird. Right? It was the first time that I have ever spoken to somebody that truly knew, like, they were going to die. We all know we're going to die, right? But I think there's a big difference between going, I'm going to die someday, to I'm going to die soon, to I'm going to die within a week, right? He had like complete kidney failure, right? His blood was being poisoned. He had 24 hours to 5 days, and he knew that. And so when I got on the call with him, it was like one of the moments that he was genuinely, I guess, conscious, because, you know, you're starting to get into, like, I guess, a state of loopiness, especially when you go on hospice and you start getting given morphine and shit. But I call him and he goes, "Hey, Joe." And I'm like, "Yeah, what's up? How you doing?" And I don't know why I said that, right? And I don't want to say I'm glad I did, but it segued the conversation very rapidly. And I knew that he was dying through previous conversations with, obviously, my mom and everything. And it was weird because he responded and he laughed. And he said, "Not good, Joe." And I remember being like, "I'm sorry to hear that." You know, I didn't know what to say. But then I then immediately after, he was like, "I'm going on hospice." And he was like, "I made the tough decision," and I could hear him raspy in his voice, like an unease. And, you know, I know none of you know my grandfather, but he was a very sure man, as I think many grandfathers are, right? Somebody that everybody relies on and seems like they have the answer to everything. I've talked to him about death on multiple occasions in which he's told me, you know, we're just passing by, right? He was very casual about the idea of death, right? Not that he didn't want it, not that he didn't care that he was going to die, but more so like, yeah, you know, we're going to die. And I could hear like a fear in his voice, and it was sad. And in a selfish manner, I immediately started to begin thinking about like my own fear of my own death, right? And how, you know, my 80-plus-year-old grandfather living his entire life feels unsure in these last moments. And I talked to him about it, and, you know, he ended up saying quality over quantity, which he's told me multiple occasions, and I fully agree with, right? The idea of, he had the option of going on dialysis, which is basically where they, like, you know, filter your blood for you, but he would have to do it like 8 hours a day, you know, fucking 5 days a week, and it would, you know, increase his lifespan by like a month. So it's like, who gives a shit? You know, at that point, I agree with it, you know, in the sense of like, if I'm going out in a month, I'm going out in a day, who gives a fuck? And Marcus Aurelius talks about that, and the idea that, like, if somebody tells you you're going to die in a day, or somebody tells you you're going to die in a week, it doesn't really matter, right? Because that's just such a, like an invaluable amount of time. It doesn't matter, right? I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it's like a day versus a year is meaningful, but a day versus a week, it's like, who gives a fuck, you know, especially if it's going to be unenjoyable. So we ended up talking about that, and he was one of those, and I feel like this is a lot of grandparents, maybe not, you know, relatable to everybody, but at least some people. I feel like old men don't say "I love you" a lot, and he was going to hang up. He was just going to hang up the phone. And I was like, well, in my head, I knew this was probably the last time I was ever going to speak to him. So I was like, "I love you, Pop-Pop." All right. And he like paused and he said, "I love you, Joe." Oh my God, I'm going to cry. And it was sad, you know, but I'm happy I was able to talk to him in that moment, because if I hadn't gotten out of that stream, right, if I hadn't left, I would have never spoken to him. I would have never heard his voice for the last time. And that's one of the weirdest things about mourning, is it brings back all these memories, right? Especially if it's somebody meaningful that's, I guess, older than you. Like if it's a parent or a grandparent, you immediately start thinking about like, holy fuck, I remember when I was a kid, and you all these memories that you haven't had in years just start popping up. And it's really upsetting because they're going to fade, right? Right now, the man that I remember is very like forefront in my mind, but as the years go, I will remember him less and less, right? I will forget his voice, right? I will forget the way he looked unless I look at a photo of him, right? And things like that are really upsetting. And this is a side conversation, something that I love and that I want to share, I guess, is figure out your loved one's favorite music, right? Whoever you know, you probably understand some song that's attached to them. And that is, going through having somebody that I know die has made me appreciate music more than I ever have before, because not only does it transcend time in the sense that you could listen to music from 300 years ago and get a glimpse into what people are truly going through, right? Because obviously you could have historical accounts and stories and tales, but nothing really hits you emotionally more than songs, right? More than listening to the music people made in that time to truly understand the feelings and the emotions they had to put into that music. And the one thing that I will remember is his favorite songs, right? One of them was A Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Whenever I hear that song, I just fucking break down, man. But it, like, no matter how the memories fade, when you hear that, it instantly snaps back. And I think music is so fascinating as well, because in Alzheimer's patients and dementia patients and people that can't remember their family members, their own face, their own name, what they did, right, in their own life, when you play a song that they listen to, they immediately pick it up. They can sing along, right? Even if they don't even remember who they are, they can remember this random song that they had. And so it's like music in general attaches so much. Like, we have so many memories and things that are rooted in song. And it just made me appreciate music so much more. Sorry, that's a little side rant. But another thing is, when I went to the funeral, I got to say, I hate open caskets. I think, obviously I'm going to respect the desires of anyone that it's your dying wishes. I'm not going to fucking sit there and hate on it and be like, oh, you want an open casket. I don't like the idea of open casket funerals personally, because I think I'm staring at a dead fucking body, right? It's a husk of who they were. In myself, in my physical form, this isn't me, right? The me that existed, the memories that I have, the experiences that I shared, the person you were, right, isn't physical, right? And while I'm not religious, while a lot of people perceive me as atheist, even though I'm not, I would say I'm more agnostic, I don't believe in an afterlife. So I think people immediately go, oh, he's atheist. I can't disagree necessarily with the idea that something created the universe, but I don't believe that the monotheistic God, I guess, the Abrahamic religions are right in my mind, if that makes sense. But anyways, back to what I was saying. When I use Sarah, I've been to another funeral, right? When I was in high school, one of the kids above me, my senior year, committed suicide. So he had just graduated and he took his own life, and the whole school went to, because I went to a Christian preparatory school. And the whole school attended his funeral, and the mass in general. And we saw his body. And I remember, I knew the guy, right? It's like, it doesn't bring back, it makes you sad, but it's not like you're staring at them, right? Not only because they're a dead body that's getting dressed up by in a morgue in general, and they're putting makeup on them and sucking the blood out of them and shit. I'm not trying to be like fucking traumatic here, but that's what they do, right? And so when you stare, I'm letting you know, if you've never been to a funeral where they have an open casket, I'm just forewarning you, you're just gonna be staring at a dead fucking body. I think it's less emotional in my mind than other people perceive it. I think a lot of people break down. I broke down when I looked at, it was a piece of paper. It was pictures of him, and then it was a piece of paper, and it said his name and his life, right? Like, right now, everybody that's watching this video, you have the first year. My year's 2002, and then a dash. And you don't have a death date yet. But when you see that on somebody you know, it's like, that's it, right? That's the closed bracket. That's their fucking life. And that really made me more sad than even staring at his fucking dead body, because it's not him. It's not the man I knew. And another thing outside of music that made me remember him was I ended up inheriting his colognes. And the smells, man. Oh my God, I'm so happy that I was able to get those. And nobody else wanted them. And I was like, I don't know why nobody else wants these. These are fucking awesome, right? Because that's a memory and a thing, like a memento that you'll be able to attach to somebody. And I think that's so meaningful. I think when a lot of people die, immediately everybody goes to, where are the assets going to? Where is this going to? Where is that going to? Fuck that shit. I went in his trash can and fucking grabbed the last beer bottle he drank, because that's the shit that I'll remember him for, right? That's the shit I want to keep. Those are the things that matter with the people you love. It's not the money. It's not the materialistic things. when your dad dies, when your mom dies, when your grandparents die, when your siblings die, when you die, the things that matter are the small things that remind you of the experiences of them, not the fucking US dollar attachment to their fucking life. Like, who gives a shit about that? You know what I mean? And I know this is probably going to upset some of the religious people when I say this, but when I left that funeral, all I felt was hatred. Not towards him, right? But like the universe in general. Like, why do we have to go through this? And obviously, you know, I have a fucking tattoo that says life is only precious because it ends, right? I'm upset and because he's dead, right? But these are experiences that only have value because they're, you know, they have an end date, right? They have an expiration date. You know, if you could just experience things infinitely, nothing would really matter because you could just re-experience fucking everything, right? In some infinite loop, right? If you existed for billions of years. But when I left, I just felt like an angry cry. If you've ever been, well, you could probably remember when you're a kid, if you got in an argument or something, you got so angry, you ball your fists and you start crying and people make fun of you or some shit. Maybe that's only me, but I had fucking anger issues when I was a kid. Shocker. And people would rage bait me and I would get so angry I would fucking cry. And that's what I felt, man. And I hadn't had that feeling in so long, right? I've had sadness and I've had anger, but an angry cry is like the most rare and weird emotion to feel. Not like a happiness cry you'll see in movies as well, but it's like, or you'll just experience in your life when you get fucking married or some shit one day. But an angry cry is like so attuned to mourning, and it was horrible. I all I felt was like pure hatred. I was upset that whole, and I've felt that feeling, you know, in like lesser amounts over the past few weeks, but that whole day I just felt like physically, like I wanted to punch a fucking tree, man. I actually did punch a metal stall and ended up fucking bruising the shit out of my fists. But like, I felt angry, right? And I don't want to say I felt angry with God because I don't necessarily believe in it, but like, I can't sit there and think to myself like, wow, like we're being made to go through this. Like, it felt horrible, right? Horrible. And I don't know, like a lot of the people at a funeral are going to have varying beliefs, you know, and I know some people have similar beliefs to me, and I know a lot of people have very drastically different beliefs than me and are highly religious, right? And I saw the full spectrum of everything while I was there. And I got jealous of the bro. Like the amount of people that would talk to me and be like, he's in a better place now. I got mad. Like, over obviously when somebody said that to me, I was like, thank you, I appreciate that, right? I'm not gonna be rude because they're trying to be nice, you know, and that's obviously what they believe. But it's like, I got mad, I got physically upset because it's like, I don't think he's in a better place. I think he's fucking dead, right? I think he's gone. I think there's nothing of him that will exist outside of the memories that I have of him. And when I cease to exist, those memories will cease to exist. And I spoke at the funeral and I said basically that I will carry on the memory of you until it's my time to pass, because that's how I perceive it, right? He will only exist among the people that remember him, right? I think that matter could not be created or destroyed, but I think that when you die, the energy of your consciousness dissipates and separates and is transformed in some way where it doesn't exist in the same, I guess, facet or, you know, accumulation that it did when you were alive, right? I don't think your consciousness, I don't think that transcends. I think your matter exists, but not in a way that can connect to any memory-based being that you are. And so when people would tell me, you know, he's in a better place now, I was like, I literally was fully wanting, and I would never say this to somebody. And right, I know a lot of people might get upset when I say this, but I really wanted to be like, dude, you're coping. Like, and you know, I'll respect any level of, you know, mourning that people have, but I was like, man, like we're not. I feel like whenever people mention like they're in a better place, I'm like, you're not recognizing that they're dead, right? Like physically you're saying they're dead, but you're like, oh, spiritually and consciously they're somewhere else. No, they're dead, right? I'm literally looking at a dead body right now. And, you know, I was a pallbearer as well, which is somebody that carries the casket. And that was fucking, I don't want to say a good experience, but I look back at it and I'm like, I'm happy that I did that. You know, I'm glad that I was able to experience the end days, right? That's kind of what I do like about it. I've always said I wanted to get cremated, but what I do like about casket funerals is like, not like ritualistic, but like it's a very traditional sense of dying, right? You bury them, you lay a rose on their grave, and it's like, so I guess traditional, and I love that. That's what I will say I do love about funerals, is like the full like fledged story of passing of them, more than just like them being in an urn. I think the biggest takeaway that I could have is, well, two things. Number one, obviously be appreciative of the people around you, because at some point they'll be gone and you'll be gone. So appreciate the life that you have and the life that other people have and give to you, and the experiences you could share with each of them. I'm very thankful, and I've said this before on stream, I'm glad that we're all alive at the same time. I know that the universe in the future might be way cooler than it is now, but this is a time that we all can experience together, and it is an honor to be alive at the same time as many of you, and struggle and fail and succeed, right? And recognize our differences and our wrongdoings and proceed from there, right? We all experience life in its totality together, and I love that, right? Secondly, it made me realize that no matter how sure I could be at some point in my life of death, that I will never be able to fully be okay with it, right? Because witnessing a man that seemed sure of everything be unsure in those last moments also made me realize that I think the best way to go is just have a heart attack at like a fucking 82. Like, I think the best way to go is just, oh, sorry, I'm going to go and then die, right? Like, just randomly, unknowing, ignorant to it, right? That's because having to deal with the physical process of dying, right, on hospice is so fucking sad. So sad and scary, right? And watching people having to go through that, I feel so bad, right? And I think hospice is great as well, because it's basically, hospice, if you don't know, is like end of life care. That's basically what it means. It's like if you have terminal cancer, stage 4 kidney failure, you know, you're going to die within a definitive amount of time. You're basically like put on end of life care, where instead of trying to fix the problems, they're just trying to make you more comfortable in your last moments, and they're giving you morphine and painkillers and, you know, sponge baths, and making like the last moments of your, you know, the last days of your life enjoyable. But it's like, you're not even really conscious for a lot of it, right? Like, you're just going to be like knocked out on fucking drugs. It depends on what type of hospice you're on and how bad your condition is, but, and like dosages of shit. But it's like, I don't know if that'd be the way that I would want to go, you know? And I don't know how I want to go. And I don't think there's like a real way to, obviously you're not going to be able to choose. But I don't know. I don't want to die. And I would say I'm afraid of death. And in the philosophical and physical sense, I think I'm more scared of the physical act of dying and the emotions and the feeling that I would have than the philosophical meaning of non-existence, right? Because I think another reason I would want to just like randomly die one day is because then you don't have to physically sit there and stare death down, right? Then then you don't have to deal with that. It's just like snap of the fingers, you're gone, right? You're going to have all these thoughts and fears of like, what if there's this? What if there's that? What if the afterlife doesn't exist? What if it does? Blah, blah, blah. What's after this? Did I live a full life? Versus just lights out, right? And you're never going to, people always sit there, like, in my mind, because there's nothing after, I always go, oh, well, I would be so worried that I'm going to die this way. And if I don't know that I'm going to die, that'll suck. I'll be upset. But I won't be upset. I'll be dead, right? You know what I mean? Like, I can't sit here and be like, oh, I don't want to just randomly die one day. I've always said, like, oh, I wish you could tell me I'm going to die in my sleep one night. But I wouldn't want to know that, because then I'm just going to be tweaking about it. And I'll be dead anyway, right? Versus me just having a good day, you know, coming to terms with it maybe a month before, being like, yeah, I'm probably going to die soon. And then it just going, you know. I think that's like, I guess, the most peaceful way for the individual, most traumatic for the family, for sure, you know, if like you're at a fucking family barbecue and somebody just dies. But I don't know. I feel like that's just So in all honesty, I think it's the better way. The last thing I'll say is it made me very appreciative of the people that I still have, right? And I think as you age, you're going to witness more and more people die, and you'll not necessarily become numb to it, but similar to how like paramedics become numb to their job, you'll kind of become numb to funerals and like death, right? Not in the full sense of like you won't care when people die, but it'll be like going to a job for the third month instead of the third day. You know, you'll understand the process of it. You'll still have to consume and understand mourning in general, right? Especially if it's people that you're close with, right? I think grandparents dying is less emotional than parents or siblings or loved ones that are like significant others. But it also made me fully realize that like, many of you may know my girlfriend Brooke. Side conversation. Many of you may know, this is the last thing I'll say. I know this is a long video. Many of you may know my girlfriend Brooke, and, I do want to marry her one day, and I would love to spend my life with her. I've told her, I was like, I hope I die before you. And I think a lot of people would disagree and be like, oh, I'd rather live longer. Men do terrible. Statistically, men do terrible if they have to. If you're like I would not want to be the last one to go. Out of everybody how fucking shitty that would be. Being the first to go is terrible too. But, I think being like third to last, we had a good run type of shit. I think that'd be the way. Because dying, widowers versus widows tend to do better. Statistically, men in like their late 60s, 70s say that their best friend's their wife, whereas like 30% of wives say their best friend's their husband. And you've probably seen that in like a podcast clip or some shit. But women tend to have a lot more foundational relationships with people than men, right? Men's closest relationships tend to actually be their significant other and their mom. And so those are usually, it depends. Some people are really close with their dad or their siblings or something like that. But usually like the worst deaths that you're going to deal with as a guy are your mom and your wife if you're obviously in a straight relationship and married. But it varies by individual, but usually men fare pretty poorly because men have very surface level relationships, right? I have friends that I would say I love them as friends and we've had deep conversations, but women have it's different. Women have a lot closer bond with people than men do. And that's not of everybody, but it's just like on average, right? Women will have like 3 very close relationships where they can like talk about anything versus guys where it's like when they're drunk, they're like, I love you, man. So it's a lot different, but I'd want to go first. Not soon, not like too soon, I'd want it to be like bang, bang, I'm not trying to say it's like when I die, Brooke should die a month later, but it'd be like, I'd hope that I'd age very like long, right? Live a long time. I don't want to die when I'm like 60, right? That might happen. You might die tomorrow. I might die tomorrow. You can't control that, right? I also think that's why you have to remember death, right? This makes you remind yourself like, fuck, I could die at any moment, right? So cherish every day as if it's your last, right? Carpe diem, memento mori, shit like that. But I think it's more so like, I'd love to be like, I die 85, she dies 86 or something. I'm not saying I want her to die soon after me. Okay, I'm going to, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment anything you want me to do, philosophy rant-wise. I'll probably be doing something that's more philosophical and actually referencing philosophers soon. But I think I'm turning this channel more into like, I'm just going to ramble about shit, deep shit, whether it be philosophical or just life in general. I'm going to ramble about stuff, money, politics, religion, whatever it may be on this channel. I think I always used to do what I did when I was I used to always perceive when I would vlog that it had to be like some high quality level shit. I'm just going to make it my own. It's going to be my own little shitty video. Same with this. I'm just going to basically ramble as if it's a fucking podcast where I just speak my mind. And if you want to listen, you want to listen. Anyways, see you later.